Hi boys and girls, and welcome back. So now I'm going to show you how to customize your tote bag, your coaster, or the cape that you've made for Spirit Week. Just because it fits a little bit better on my desk, I'm going to be demonstrating these on some coasters, but all of this works for whatever you've made. So there's a few different options that you can use for customizing your coaster, your cape, or your tote bag. So the first thing that you could do, you could use other pieces of fabric and you could use them to add onto what you've already created. So I'm going to demonstrate that on this coaster. So I went ahead and I cut out some flowers because when I think of city neighbors, I think about growth and growing and how you guys grow throughout the year. So I'm going to use some flowers and I'm going to add them on top. Before I glue things down, I just play with them and arrange them in different ways to see how I like them. So that's an arrangement that I think I'm pretty happy with. So then I can go ahead and glue it down. So I'm just using regular Elmer's glue for this. And what I'm going to do to make sure that it sticks okay is I'm just going to use tiny dots of glue. And I'm just going to add it in a few places. So again, just tiny dots of glue. Once I glue it, I'm just going to leave it there overnight before I start picking it up and doing things with it. So that's how you would customize a coaster if you're using fabric. You can also customize coasters using paint. Now, if you're going to use paint for a coaster or a tote bag or a cape, you need to make sure that you're either using a fabric paint, so it will say fabric paint on it, or that you're using an acrylic paint, which will say acrylic paint on it. Acrylic paint comes in a few different forms. Sometimes you can find it in tubes, other times you can find it in a small squeeze bottle like this one. So for my example, I've decided that I'm going to use the white paint because I just like the way that my coaster already has some white showing in it. So I'd like to bring that back into the yellow section. So again, I have to think of a symbol that represents city neighbors to me. So when we think about city neighbors, what comes to mind? Sometimes I think of the sign at the front of the building that has the tree that welcomes us all each day. I've already told you I think of flowers and growing when I think of city neighbors, but I also see a lot of butterflies around school too, and they're also a good symbol for changing and growing. So I think I'm going to make a butterfly for this one. So I could go ahead and paint directly on here, or I could make another template. So I'm going to show you how to make a template. That way you know what you're getting before you start painting. So I've cut out a square that is roughly the size of the main part of the coaster here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold that square in half, making sure that both of the ends are touching. Once my design is in half, I can use my pencil and I'm going to draw my design in half. So I'm only drawing 1/2 of my whole design. So when I open it up, it will be a butterfly. Or if I open it up, it would become a whole tree. So things are going to be symmetrical if you're using it this way. And then I can go ahead and cut out my template for my butterfly. Now I could use this butterfly, and if I paint around it, it will leave a ring around the shape of the butterfly. Or if I use this one, just the butterfly will be white. So I think I'm actually going to use this one and make a ring around it with the acrylic paint. So once you figure out where you want your stencil to go, then you can start painting. For this, I'm not actually going to use a paintbrush. I find it easiest to use a sponge brush or a sponge, or I just balled up some fabric that I had, and I'm going to use that to dab around my butterfly stencil. And then when I'm done, I can pull it away, and I'm left with my little butterfly. I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to show you what it would look like if I use the outside of the stencil, so I would be getting a positive of the butterfly. This time I got a negative of the butterfly because I used the inside of the stencil. So I'm going to just flip it over. And I'm going to repeat the same process. And when I'm done, I can carefully peel away. And this time I'm left with a positive of my butterfly. So now I've customized my work using both fabric and paint. I could continue to customize by layering fabric on top of painted things or layering paint on top of fabric things that I've added. But you can also use Sharpie markers to add words to your work if you don't feel like cutting letters out. So I think in the middle of my butterfly, I'd like to add CNCS so that everybody knows that it is a City Neighbors coaster. So now both of my City Neighbors Spirit Week coasters are finished. Again, these customizing tips can be used on coasters, tote bags, or superhero capes that you decide to make this week, and I cannot wait to see what you get up to on Padlet this week.